Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
The biggest issue for all of us, and it's going to be, I believe, will drive public policy the next couple decades, is the graying of America.
Really now? Well, let's find out just how secure the Secure Act really is.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement. Your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist, 5-time author, and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, I knew it would happen sooner or later. We at WorryFree Productions would be going about the daily and weekly task of laying out segments for our programs dealing with one particular topic. This topic being your required minimum distribution, or what is commonly referred to as your RMD. And then, seeing as though our programs are pre-recorded, that the government would come along and change the rules, forcing us to rework our program script. Well, guess what? This just happened as Congress recently passed a bill that is, at the time of this recording, December 23rd, 2019, sitting on the President's desk waiting to be signed. And it's called the Secure Act. Now, you know why we always provide you the view or the date of the pre-recorded shows now. You never know what might come up. And as we'll see today, ironically, as we have begun a deep dive into this whole RMD thing, this bill will have a huge impact on when you will begin your required minimum distributions, that is, taking money out of your tax-infested 401k and trying to put it in your pockets. Yet, as much as the politicians and the custodians of all this money want you to believe that this new law will be a good thing for you, in some ways, I beg to differ. Oh, by the way, speaking of pensions and annuities, we are also going to share with you something about the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. We'll talk later in this show about the government's role in not only pensions, but 401k plans. Good stuff coming your way. Well, welcome, folks, to the WorryFree Retirement. I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist, fiduciary, and required minimum distribution specialist, Tony Walker. And today, we begin week 2 of our series dealing with your 401k and when you must start paying the piper for all those taxes you've been deferring. You know, it is funny, as we talk on this show about retirement planning, sometimes I do not emphasize enough that this show is not your typical money show. This show, the WorryFree Retirement, is simply dedicated to savers. Those are people who are more concerned with the return of their money than on it. We don't cater to investors. We're not trying to reach out to speculators. That's the job of the other financial shows you see on radio and TV and that you Google on the internet. Our main goal, and I've been on TV over 20 years now, is to make sure that savers are more concerned with protecting their money, but also how to best use and enjoy that money while you can, as opposed to putting it off to some point in the future when you can't. Remember, money is worth nothing. Listen to this. It's worth nothing until it is converted to cash and used. I could care less whether you've got a gajillion dollars in your 401k right now. I don't care if the market's up 20% this year, which it is. If it is not converted to cash and used, literally, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Now, does that mean I'm saying you should cash in your 401k or maybe even bury it in the backyard? Well, of course not. What I'm trying to say is that you have to have a realistic outlook on what you have and when you'll need it. And then you have to have an outlook of how can I enjoy this money and use it without running out of it. It's spending your debt money now while you can, but also, which is what we specialize in, again, making sure it lasts a lifetime. So, what will we do for the remaining time on our show? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into this recently passed bill called the Secure Act. and decide if it's really a good thing for you or possibly better for the government and Wall Street. You stay tuned. I'm Tony Walker. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and in case you're just now joining us, we are taking a close look and personal look at something that was just passed by both houses of Congress, something politicians are dubbing the Secure Act. Apparently, the government's version of a new and improved way for Americans to not only save for retirement, but also how to defer the enjoyment of it until death do us part, and then slipping in one of the most devastating provisions to our kids, eliminating the ability for them to put off the pain of dealing with the tax tumor. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. In fact, over the next several weeks, we are going to discuss 10 different options that savers have to deal with this whole RMD. In fact, let's kind of take a look at these right now. And again, we'll go over into more detail of these folks over the next couple weeks, but here's your options with any 401k. Whether you're retired, retiring soon, or on up into your years, it doesn't matter. With the RMD, you can do one of 10 things to deal with it. You can convert it, you can gift it, you can insure it, you can annuitize it. Remember earlier we were talking about the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation and pensions. That's really all they are, is annuities. You can spend it, you can split it. That's what we call our Worry-Free Retirement Split IRA concept. You can just keep deferring it. You can still stretch it to some degree, diversify it, and then our favorite, something we do at Tony Walker Financial all the time, you can actually roll it over. So basically, before we get into the show, we have to understand the players of this game. Money really is like a ball game. Who are the parties involved in the 401k, and why you, the saver, have been placed on a pedal of risk and uncertainty, something prior to the advent of the 401k back in 1978, people my granddad's generation never had to worry about. So as you can see, prior to 1978, there were really three main parties involved in saving for Americans' retirement. There was the employer, who provided something called a defined benefit plan or pension plan. Now, these defined benefit plans, which were numerous in 1978, are quite rare today. Basically, they are a guaranteed stream of income that guarantees the employee, based on his or her number of years of service, in terms of how much they've worked for this employer, will get a set amount of money called mailbox money. Now, this was the gig with my granddad and his employer at Bell South. Old Wild Bill jumped up on the telephone poles in 1932 and worked with them for 43 years until finally he retired, ironically, in 1978 with a pension. You can see here, it wasn't much, but at least Granddad knew what he would receive and that this amount of money would last for the rest of his life, guaranteed. Now, this guaranteed stream of income took the worry off the table for Granddad. All he and Hazel had to do was not spend more than the pension income was bringing in, and they would be fine, which they did, by the way. But still, even with pensions, the government was a key player in the equation because just like today, they not only oversaw the laws governing pensions, but they also subsidized, as we mentioned earlier, with something called the pension guarantee system. So really, this was really a pretty simple system for everyone. But as 1978 was coming to a close, employers were nervous that these people out there that they had to insure through the pensions were living longer than expected, that they might have trouble paying all these workers this income for life. A true uncertainty indeed. So, in a hurry, now this is just my theory, the employers and the big businesses out there and the politicians and then the folks on Wall Street got together to create a new form of savings system called the 401k. So the employers left and Wall Street came onto the scene, shifting the burden not onto the employers, but all of a sudden squarely on the shoulders of these hardworking Americans, and thus we have the dawn of the 401k plan, which, as you can see, has allowed Wall Street to infiltrate Main Street, now moving trillions of dollars from guaranteed assets such as annuities within these plans to something that Wall Street charges fees on, and also that the poor old Joe Lunchbox out there has at risk. That's not just Wall Street, but banks, insurance companies, big institutions all benefit from this money stockpiled in these 401k plans. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the 401k plan. It is a great savings tool. I've always said that, folks, but as a retirement planning specialist with over 35 years in this business, as evidenced by the recent changes with the Secure Act, we realize it is a lousy tool for spending and enjoying your money. Among many things, this bill, I want to focus on the three major changes that will certainly impact savers. Number one, and most importantly, the idea of the stretch. You see, before the Secure Act, your kids upon your death could inherit your 401k and take that 401k distribution, remember they have to pay taxes, as an RMD, but they could take it over their lifetime. What this benefit would be to them would be spread out, allowing them to enjoy the money without having to pay a bunch of taxes. Well, let's say you have a child that makes really good income. You die now and leave him or her a 401k with a huge tax tumor inside it. If your child takes that money out, it's all taxable. So that's why everyone stretched it out. It would be downright devastating. It could take as much as 40% of the money just by taxes. So the kids in the past would stretch it out. It was allowed by law, but not now. You see, the Secure Act will require them now, your kids and grandkids, they're going to force them to take this money out after you die within 10 years, meaning whether they want it or not, and regardless of their tax brackets. Listen closely. Think about the tax brackets your kids could be in one day. Doesn't matter. They have to take the money out and pay taxes on it. Now, what's funny is provision number 2, which I'm about to describe seems contradictory to number 1. Currently, if you've reached age 70 and a half, you have to start your minimum distributions. The reason is the government wants the taxes owed on this money. But while they're making the kids take it out in 10 years, they're allowing through this bill for you to put off your minimum distribution till 72. Well, why in the world would they do this? Why would they make kids take it sooner and you later, but allow current retirees to take it later than sooner? You know, tax rates, here's the thing, folks. Right now, in 2019, with all these baby boomers hitting 70 and a half, tax rates are at an all-time low, not high, low. Compare that to the all-time high deficits, the enormous amount of debt in this country, and the government doesn't want you to take money out to get the tax revenue to help on the debt. It doesn't make sense. Here's why. They actually want this money to keep growing to another day. Why? Because in the future, now this is just yours truly predicting this, in the future, taxes are probably going to go up. In fact, in 2026, these low tax rates are set to expire. So this is why, in my opinion, they've pushed this age back to 72. They make this out to be a great deal because you get to keep growing your money. And my idea on this whole thing is, what for? Why are you putting off enjoying this money to an age when you may not be able to enjoy it anyway? And finally, the third thing, which again sounds reasonable, I guess, is they're going to make it easier for younger folks to contribute to the 401k. In fact, they're going to allow the part-time workers and everybody else, and this sounds good on the surface again, but assuming these folks are putting in this money in a pre-tax fashion, and we'll see this in the next segment in just a second, interesting stuff, they're actually going to possibly put this off to a point in time where they could be in a higher bracket. So what we're getting ready to learn in this next segment, what you're going to find out is what the Secure Act brings to you and what you should do right now. I'm going to get the whiteboard out, some interesting stuff about this whole notion of, does the 401k really save you any money in taxes? You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker. I'll be right back. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. If you're still not quite sure how this whole thing affects you, this Secure Act, why don't you go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. When you get there, in the search bar, just type in downloads. You want to check out the Secure Act white paper. This is absolutely free. This white paper has a quick need-to-know points basis on how this new law is going to affect your 401k. Remember, the penalty on not getting this right is 50%. That's a huge penalty. So do yourself a favor, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and download the Secure Act white paper. You know, we've been talking a lot about the parties involved. You said, hey, Tony, what about Wall Street? Where do they fit into all this? And by the way, you know, we're recording this again on December 23rd, 2019. The market's at an all-time high. What's to worry about, Tony? And I hearken back to 08. You know, 08 was a difficult time for everybody. Not that I don't know if we're going to go through a downturn, but I really worried in 08, all this exuberance, the market was going up, it would never go down, and it dropped about 40%. So since we're talking about RMDs, your required minimum distribution, I want to walk you through something. Let's imagine we go back to 2005, all right? You've retired. This was before the market crash of 08. This is a $300,000 IRA. And let's say you're 70 and a half, or now as we find out, you've turned 72 and you have to take out your minimum distribution, right? We're just imagining this. That year in 2005, the market went up about 5%. Your RMD would be approximately $11,000. Remember, this is based on your age, the amount of money, and your life expectancy. The government has tables for this, which would still leave you $302,000 in the account. Pretty darn good. So we start off the next year, you're 61. Obviously, you'd be 73 at this point. We're just showing you some examples of this. By the way, this is the same chart. I had Megan change this out. It's the same chart we use for what we call sequencing risk for younger people. So if you're younger and watching this, it's the same effect. We're trying to understand what happens to income in a down market. So anyway, we've revalued the 302, and that year it made 16%. The market went up 16%. You still had to take out an RMD. Notice it's increasing. Okay, it's going to go up every year. And now we're at 336, and you're going, Tony, this is great. What is to worry about? Next year, 336, market goes up. You take out your RMD, keeps growing. But watch out. 2008, you got 341. The market drops 37%. That's what the S&P did. You have to take out even more money. Remember, your RMD is based on your age, life expectancy, and the value of your account. So it keeps going up. And look at that. All of a sudden, your 300 overnight drops to 205. So folks, what I would say, if you're sitting there right now and you don't have a game plan, if you're under the age of 70, over the age of 70, you have not thought about the effects of what's going to happen when you start drawing these RMDs out, it'll happen eventually, when we have a downturn. Why don't you consider taking some winnings off the table, or at least meeting with somebody like us to see how much we should be putting in a safe position to preserve your retirement income. All right, I promised you this. I want to show you something I saw years ago. This was really interesting, because I was always taught years and years ago, back when tax rates were higher, that you should put the max into your 401k. I heard this back in the 80s and early 90s, max out, max out. Why did they tell you to do this? Well, number one, it was a conflict of interest, because those people that told you that, Wall Street, got to hang on the money and invest it and get fees. But more importantly, they told you that because they wanted you to assume that you would one day be in a lower tax bracket. So I went through this little exercise. So we're going to go back in time. We imagine currently that somebody makes $100,000 a year in income, okay, and they want to put money in a pre-tax position, so they invest $10,000 in their 401k plan, which is fully deductible. That means their taxable income is $90,000. And let's assume that the tax rate we're using for both of these examples is 20%. That's fine. So you have to deduct 20% off that. That's roughly $18,000 or so, some change. So after that, that means you've got $72,000 in your pocket. $10,000 was put in the 401k to be locked up till retirement. You had taxes still on this money. So yeah, that lowered your taxes. So now you got a net of 72. So now we're fast forwarding. Just to take that same number, we're imagining in the future our 401k is worth $100,000. We're retired now. We're still in a 20% bracket, and you go to take money out. Remember, you had to pay taxes at this 20% rate. You still had taxes. You didn't get out of taxes. What you did is you postponed $10,000 for being taxed. That's why they call it pre-tax. Well, now all of a sudden, you want to take out some money. We've assumed you're still in a 20% bracket, and you just decide to liquidate this account. Just take it out all, well, at 20%, that means there's a $20,000 tax bill, which nets you $80,000. So you still had 20% here and 20% on this amount of money. Even the growth of it is taxed. So my question is, where is the tax savings? In this case, there is none. Now, the only way there's tax savings is if your future bracket, okay, this is really important, which it might be, is lower. Okay, so in the future, if this bracket was 15, 16%, granted, you would pay less taxes, meaning you would net more. The problem with this is, if we're in a higher bracket, which is what I'm predicting, and I think this is why they did the Secure Act. They know that if brackets go up and they force more money out, they're going to tax it potentially at a higher bracket, all right? That means that you will have worse taxes. You will pay more in taxes. Is this making sense? So folks, here's what I would suggest. You have, while we're in this low tax environment, we have opportunities, and again, we're going to share these over the next 2 shows, on how to deal with the tax tumor within your 401k plan, how to maybe even get all around, totally around this whole RMD thing, and best of all, we're going to show you how potentially we can show you how when your kids eventually inherit this money, that they won't have to pay any taxes whatsoever. Pretty good stuff. We'll be talking about that over the next 2 programs on the Worry-Free Retirement. All right, we're about out of time. I got to get me a cup of coffee because I want to come back and share something with the Bible that talks about you and I, me. Everybody gets kind of cautious about talking about me. I want to talk about me for a while. How about you? Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
Tired of the financial world chasing after your money? Dinner, seminar invitations, annoying pop-up ads on your computer from out-of-state advisors? It all adds up to confusion. There is a better way. Meet in person with nationally recognized retirement specialist Tony Walker. Tony's personal one-on-one approach has helped thousands of savers worry less about money, and best of all, Tony's right in our own backyard. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Make the short drive to meet in person with Tony now. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Well, as my late great father used to always say, nothing stays the same. And it couldn't be more true with your 401k plan. We were promised that this plan was going to be the mother of all savings tool. We were promised that one day we'd be in lower tax brackets. So just max that puppy out. And as we've seen, promises made are not always promises kept. But not so with our Creator. Our God gives us promises that He never changes. He never changes His ways. And while the world's ways are always coming to an end, the Bible claims that God's ways, His promises, are what's called everlasting. He never changes nor takes away what He gives us to those who trust Him. And best of all of these promises from God come with no strings attached, no requirements of things we've got to do to stay in His good grace. You see, man's promises, I call it wishful thinking, always falls apart. God's promises are referred to as covenants. A covenant is never broken. But God is the only one capable of keeping these covenants. He's the only perfect God that can do so. And since He's the creator of all things, He can maintain these covenants with us forever, even after we die and leave this world. You know, Charles Spurgeon reveals an important verse of Scripture to verify this truth, and boy, it's a good one. The last words of King David's were as follows in 2 Samuel 23:5. He simply says this, "Has He not made with me an everlasting covenant?" You know, the key word in this simple verse is me. Now, normally, we tend to not want to admit that we want to talk about me or ourselves, but the truth is, we're like this guy. We're always obsessed with talking about me.
One guy talking plenty for everybody. Me, myself, right? And then I, and then myself, and me. I couldn't tell this one about I because I was talking about myself, and then me.
What Christians fail to realize is that God is very, very interested in me. He truly understands what's best for me. And as we hear David cry out for me, we discover that it's okay to focus on the things that He places with us, the truth and the hope which only He can provide. Our God's promises are everlasting. His promises include salvation, our spending eternity with Him, an everlasting eternity that nobody can take away from us, and you can certainly take to the bank. Well, how about you? Do you feel like the game plan you have in place for your 401k, your IRA, your lump sum pension, or any other monies that are constantly changing? Do you feel like that you don't have anybody in your corner, a fiduciary who knows the rules of the financial game, who will be there for you to help you see this thing to the end? Well, I'd like to be that person that helps you. I'm Tony Walker, owner of Tony Walker Financial, and we are retirement planning specialists. This is all we do. We're not money managers. We're not wealth managers. We're just helping hardworking people try to use and enjoy their money and protect it for the rest of their lives. So why not take action to put a plan in place that fits your situation, one that is focused on you? Let's talk in person. You can meet with me in person. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to do so. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. What we'll do, we'll get your information together and you and I will have a meeting. Now at that meeting, we spend about 30 minutes together talking about what you want for your retirement. Forget about age 72, forget about minimum distributions, forget about this idea of risking all your money in the market. Let's develop a safe and simple game plan that you and your family can count on. Take advantage of meeting with me in person or even just talking by phone. Again, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. And by the way, don't forget to get the free download, the white paper on the Secure Act to see how this law will affect your 401k plan. Well, speaking of 401k plans, the next 2 weeks we're going to spend a lot of time processing through your options for dealing with your RMD. Next week we'll talk to those folks who are under the age of 72, the new RMD minimum distribution age, and then the following week we'll be talking to the folks that are approaching 72 or who have already reached age 72 or beyond. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week, but you remember on the WorryFree Retirement, if all else fails between now and then, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.